Evelyn didn't ask me to sit. That should have been my first clue. She smiled the way people do when they've already decided something and don't want to watch you react to it. Hands folded, voice calm, too calm. Cain, she said, we've reviewed things, and honestly, this just isn't a fit anymore. We think it's best if you move on, for your own good. I stayed standing. I don't know why. My legs just didn't bend. For my own good, I repeated, not loud, just enough to hear myself say it. No one ever says that unless they're about to take something from you. Pause for a second. If your boss said this to you, would you believe them, or would you start wondering what they didn't want you to see? Nina from HR slid a folder across the desk. She didn't look at me when she did it. Her nails were chipped. I noticed that before I noticed the word separation on the cover. Transition support is included, she said, like she was reading off a checklist. So that's it, I asked. Looking at Evelyn. No conversation, no response. Evelyn let out a slow breath, like I was making this harder than it needed to be. We didn't want this to get emotional. Right then, my laptop screen went black. Not dim, not asleep, just gone. I tapped the spacebar. Nothing. System access is removed automatically, Nina said. Standard procedure. I looked past them at the security guard by the door. Big guy, neutral face, already there. Automatically, I said. During the meeting, Evelyn's smile didn't move. We just wanted to avoid any confusion. Confusion, like I might remember something I wasn't supposed to. I nodded once, not because I agreed, because if I opened my mouth again, something worse was going to come out, and they'd already decided this version of the story didn't include my voice. This is a Revengeaita original production, a story about why you should never mistake a woman's silence for weakness. Let's get back to that office. By the time I got back to my desk, everyone already knew. No one said anything. They didn't have to. The air felt tight, like the whole floor was holding its breath. Offices run on gossip. Always have. Nina showed up before I even pulled my chair out. She didn't stand in front of me. She stood just off to the side, close enough to be there, far enough to pretend she wasn't watching. If you could finish packing by 4:30, she said quietly, that would help us avoid a disruption. Disruption, I repeated, dropping the folder from the meeting onto my desk. She nodded, lips pressed into what I think HR calls empathy. People get uncomfortable when things drag out. We want to keep things stable, meaning don't make this harder for us than it already is. Around me, screens suddenly became very interesting. People stared at emails like they were seeing them for the first time. No one looked up. Not Mark, whose reports I'd fixed more times than I could count. Not Sarah, who'd brought donuts yesterday morning and joked about working too much. Someone brushed my arm. Lila, I'm sorry, she whispered, barely moving her lips. She looked past me, straight at Nina, like she was checking how much trouble an apology might cost. Her mouth opened again. Nina cleared her throat. Lila froze. Then she nodded once, like she'd said enough, and disappeared back into her cubicle. I reached under my desk and pulled out an empty ball. The cardboard scraped against the carpet, loud in a way it shouldn't have been. A couple of heads lifted, then dropped. Take your time, Nina said. We both knew that wasn't true. If you've ever been walked out like this, you know the worst part isn't losing the job. It's realizing how fast people pretend they don't see you. I unplugged my monitor. The screen went dark, and, for a second, I caught my own reflection. I looked tired, not broken. That surprised me. My phone buzzed. A calendar reminder for a meeting tomorrow morning. One I wasn't part of anymore. I turned the phone off and dropped it into my bag, across the aisle. Mark finally looked over. His shoulders were stiff, like he was bracing for impact that wasn't coming. He knew why this was happening. He also had 2 kids and a mortgage. He looked away. This isn't personal, Nina said. I slid a notebook into the box slow, careful. Then you won't mind if I do this properly. Her jaw tightened. We'd appreciate your cooperation. I taped the box shut. The sound ripped through the room. I pulled the tape again, just to finish it. No one moved. At the elevators, Nina stood beside me, not walking me out, watching me leave. The doors closed. I glanced up at the clock on the wall, 4:15. They thought keeping me quiet would keep things buried. They were wrong. I set the box down and opened my personal laptop. It was the only thing in the room they couldn't touch. The login screen came up like nothing had happened. That helped. My hands weren't shaking. I noticed that right away. I thought they would be. They weren't. I didn't feel scared anymore. Just flat. I opened my local folder, the one I kept for my own sanity, dates, file names, drafts I remembered arguing over. I clicked without thinking too much, just following muscle memory. Then I saw it. Cain Mercer approval, complete. I stared at the screen longer than I meant to. That's not right, I said out loud. No one answered. I opened the file. It looked clean, too clean. No comments, no track changes. My name was at the bottom, time-stamped at 11:45 at night. I remembered that night. I remembered saying no. I scrolled up. Everything I'd flagged was gone. Every comment, every warning. Like I'd never raised a single concern. This is the moment it stops being about a job. Because once your name is on something like this, walking away doesn't protect you anymore. I opened the version history. There it was, late edit, early edit. My comments disappearing one by one. The approval field flipped while I was asleep. Someone finished the document for me, using my name. I called it. John picked up on the third ring. Cain, he said quietly, like he didn't want anyone to hear. You're already off-boarded. I'm not supposed to check the admin log, I said. Just check it. I listened to keys tapping, then stopping. The silence stretched. It came from HR. He said finally, override approved by the CEO's office. And legal, I asked. Another pause. They were copied. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't someone rushing. It was planned. The people who were supposed to stop this had signed off on it. My inbox refreshed one last time before access dropped completely. A subject line flashed for half a second. Legal hold preserve all records. You didn't see that, John said. I saw it. You shouldn't have. The call ended. I sat there, staring at my own name on something I didn't approve. It felt wrong in a quiet way, like someone had rearranged my life while I wasn't looking. I closed the laptop and slid it into my bag. They moved fast, faster than they needed to. That told me everything. They thought deleting me would be enough. They didn't know about the copy I kept. I checked the clock. 4:20, 10 minutes left. They chose paperwork over people. And they were about to find out how much damage paper can do when it tells the truth. At exactly 4:30, I taped the last box shut and slid it under my desk. The sound of the tape ripping cut through the office, loud, too loud. 2. Nina was still nearby, pretending to check her phone while watching everything I did. Evelyn's door stayed closed. No movement, no sound. Then the elevator dinged. Footsteps crossed the carpet. Calm, not rushed. Enough to make people look up. A woman in a dark suit stopped near the aisle. She didn't hesitate. Didn't ask anyone where to go. Her eyes found me right away. Are you Cain Mercer? My name hit the room harder than anything Evelyn had said earlier. Chairs shifted. Someone stopped typing mid-keystroke. I stood. Yes. Nina sucked in a breath like she'd just realized something had gone wrong. Across the floor, Evelyn's door cracked open. I saw her face for half a second before she fixed it. The woman stepped closer. I need to speak with you. This is usually the moment everyone realizes they've misread the situation. Because when someone walks in and says your name like that, they didn't come by accident. Evelyn moved fast, smiled tight and brittle. Excuse me, she said, cutting in. This is a private workspace. We're in the middle of an offboarding. The woman didn't look at her, not even briefly, not right now. The room went still. She's leaving, Evelyn said. A little louder. We're finishing her exit. That's not happening, the woman replied. Her voice didn't change. Not today. She turned back to me. Come with me, now. I looked at the box under my desk. Then at Nina. She was staring at the carpet like it had answers. Whatever plan they had for me ended the second that woman said my name. I picked up my bag and stepped away from the desk I'd sat at for 3 years. The woman walked beside me, matching my pace without touching my arm. Behind us, no one spoke. The office stayed frozen, caught between the story they thought they'd finished and the one that had just started to unravel. The conference room door closed behind us with a soft click. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to feel final. The woman set her bag on the table but didn't sit. She looked at me like she was checking facts she already suspected were true. My name is Renee Ashford, she said. I represent the board. That landed slowly. Not HR, not recruiting, not damage control. I stayed standing. So this isn't an exit interview. No, she said. There won't be one. She opened a thin folder. No labels, no color tabs, just paper. You were told today that your role was no longer a fit, she said. You were asked to leave before 4:30. Yes. And your system access was removed during that meeting. Yes. She closed the folder. Good. That helps with the timeline. I cross my arms, more to keep myself steady than defensive. If you're here for the board, then you already know this wasn't about my performance. I do, she said. That's why I only need one thing from you. She met my eyes. What did you refuse to sign? The image came back immediately. My name on a page I'd said no to. A compliance certification, I said. It wasn't complete. Parts of it were wrong. I documented everything. How many times did you say no? 3 formal refusals, more emails than I can count. And after that, they said I was slowing things down. I said. Evelyn told me I needed to be more flexible. Renee nodded once. No reaction, just acknowledgement. And then you were terminated. Yes. If you've ever been told to be flexible with facts, you already know what that really means. Renee leaned back slightly. Then we're on the same page. About why this happened, she said. You weren't removed because you failed. You were removed because you wouldn't go along with something you knew was wrong. She stood and gathered the folder. We'll review everything you documented. I didn't move. And my job, your termination isn't moving forward, she said. You're still employed, effective immediately, under the board's protection. The pressure in my chest shifted, not relief, something heavier, but steadier. Renee reached for the door, then paused. When the truth becomes inconvenient, the first move is to remove the person saying it. She looked back at me. My job is to stop that from working. I didn't wait for Renee to ask. I set my bag on the table and opened my laptop. The screen came on like nothing else in the building was falling apart. That helped me focus. I didn't save everything, I said. Just the things I couldn't afford to lose. Renee nodded. She didn't pull out a pen. She didn't interrupt. She watched the screen the way people do when they already know they're about to see something serious. I opened the first folder, emails, I said. These are where I raised concerns. The screen filled with subject lines, dates, long threads that stopped suddenly once the questions got uncomfortable. Temperature issues, training gaps, missing reconciliations. I said, scrolling. Every time I asked to slow down, I was told to move forward. Renee leaned closer, not dramatic, just enough to read. This is what doing your job actually looks like. Not arguing, not panicking, just leaving a record. I clicked into the second folder, version history. Timestamps stacked up the screen, early drafts with my comments, later ones without them. The approval field flipped sometime after midnight. I didn't make those changes, I said. They happened after I refused to sign. Someone used my credentials. Renee's jaw tightened. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. I opened the third folder and turned the screen toward her. This is what I approved, I said. And this is what they submitted, side by side. The differences were easy to miss if you weren't looking for them. Attachments missing. Numbers rounded. Certifications marked complete before the requirements were met. They sent the altered version, I said. With my name still on it. Renee straightened. You documented this while it was happening. Yes. And you kept copies. Yes. For your own protection, she said. For accuracy. I replied. Protection just came with it. She closed the laptop carefully, like it mattered. This wasn't a misunderstanding, she said. And it wasn't a policy issue. Her phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked up. I'm issuing a legal hold, she said. Effective immediately, no deletions, no system changes, no personnel actions including yours. The tension in my shoulders eased, slow and unexpected. Renee stood and headed for the door. When records are clear, she said, control changes hands. Then she was gone. Power doesn't always show up loudly. Sometimes it walks in, says one sentence, and everything stops. Renee didn't ask anyone before stepping onto the floor. Phone in hand, voice steady. Effective immediately, she said. A legal hold is in place. That was all it took. Nina froze where she stood, papers shaking in her hands. John Fromette looked up from his screen, fingers hovering like he'd been caught doing something he couldn't undo. Evelyn appeared in her doorway, standing so stiff it looked painful. No records are to be deleted. Renee continued. No system changes. No personnel actions. The room went quiet in a way I'd never heard before. Evelyn walked forward, trying to sound calm. You don't have the authority to shut down my operations. Renee turned toward her. No rush, no edge in her voice. I'm not shutting anything down. This is an internal HR matter. Evelyn snapped. You can't just walk in here and it's not internal anymore, Renee said. Flat, final. This is the moment people realized the rules they were hiding behind just stopped working. Nina cleared her throat. We have an offboarding in progress. For Cain, cancel it, Renee said. All of it. John hesitated. Do I restore her access, preserve everything as it is, Renee replied. No changes unless the board directs it. Evelyn's voice dropped. You're overstepping. Renee lifted her phone and angled the screen just enough for me to see the name. Harriet Cole, board chair, she's on the call, Renee said. The silence hit hard. Then computers chimed across the floor. One after another. Emergency board session. Immediate attendance required. This is unnecessary, Evelyn muttered. It's late, Renee said. Not unnecessary. She looked at me then. Just a glance. Cain, stay, I nodded. An hour ago, they wanted me gone. Renee turned back to the room. Everyone else step away from your systems. Chairs scraped back. Screens dimmed. People moved without arguing. As Renee headed toward the conference rooms, Evelyn followed a few steps behind. Not leading, following. I stayed where I was. They'd tried to make me small. Now I was the only one in the room who didn't have to move. Harriet Cole walked in like she didn't need to announce herself. No assistant, no pause at the door. She went straight to the head of the table and sat down. No one questioned it. Evelyn was still standing. This meeting is now under board control, Harriet said. Calm, even. Sit down, Evelyn. Evelyn hesitated. Just long enough for everyone to notice. She sat. Renee stood near the wall. The legal hold is active, she said. All records preserved. All personnel actions paused. Harriet nodded once, then looked directly at Evelyn. You approved a termination today. It was a restructuring decision, Evelyn said, adjusting her jacket. Operational. No, Harriet replied. It was retaliation. The room shifted. Nina moved in her chair. Harriet's eyes snapped to her. Human Resources will provide every offboarding document related to Cain Mercer, immediately. Nina didn't argue. She reached for her bag. The door opened again. A man with silver hair stepped in and took a seat without waiting for permission. Graham Vale, Harriet said, majority owner. Graham folded his hands. I've reviewed the preliminary risk. This is being blown out of proportion, Evelyn said. Graham didn't raise his voice. Forged approvals tied to compliance certifications are not minor issues. No one spoke after that. This is when the conversation stops being about loyalty and starts being about survival. Harriet leaned forward slightly. Effective immediately. Evelyn Kincaid is placed on temporary suspension pending a full investigation. Evelyn inhaled sharply. You can't do that. I can, Harriet said. And I just did. Renee slid a document across the table. The notice will go out within the hour. Harriet turned to me. Her expression softened. Just a fraction. Cain Mercer, your termination is void. The board requests your full cooperation. I nodded. The room didn't feel unstable anymore. It felt settled, just not in their favor. Graham stood. Fix what was damaged, he said. Or we will. Chairs shifted. Papers moved. Roles rearranged themselves without anyone needing to explain how. The story they'd tried to write about me was finished, and the consequences had finally found the right desk. They asked me to stay before the room had fully settled. Harriet didn't soften it. We need you to fix what was damaged, Cain. Renee stood off to the side with her tablet ready. Nina kept her eyes on the table. Evelyn's chair was empty. It felt strange how much space that absence took up. I'm not here for thanks, I said. And I don't need reassurance. Harriet studied me for a moment. Then tell us what you need. I didn't open the folder Renee slid across the table. I pushed it aside. Authority, I said. I need final say on compliance sign-offs. If I say a report doesn't go out, it doesn't. No overrides. Harriet nodded. Done. I report directly to the board. I continued. Not operations, not HR, no filters. Renee typed. Harriet nodded again. Done. I finally opened the folder. It was full of polished language about culture and alignment. I closed it. I want the truth on record, I said. A written acknowledgement that my removal was retaliation, not vague language, not policy talk. In my permanent file. Nina shifted in her chair. Harriet didn't look at her. That will be documented. And protection, I added. No sidelining, no quiet reassignment, no rewritten evaluations. Renee looked up. Non-retaliation terms will be explicit and binding. I leaned back. If any of this is negotiable, I walk. The room went quiet. This is the moment where most people settle. Cain didn't. Harriet met my eyes. You'd leave, yes. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It felt decided. Graham's voice came through the speaker. Accept it. We need her. Harriet folded her hands. All terms accepted. Renee slid a new document across the table. No filler, no spin, just clear authority. My name sat where it should have from the start. I signed. Welcome back, Harriet said. I stood. I'm not back. I'm here. As I headed for the door, the weight in my chest eased, not because I'd won, but because for the first time, I wasn't being asked to trade my judgment for security. The announcement went out before noon. No build-up, no explanation. Evelyn Kincaid's resignation was 3 sentences long. Clinical, final, no thank you note, no farewell tour. By the afternoon, her name was gone from the directory. Her calendar disappeared. Her access died the same way mine almost had quietly. That was it. Harriet stopped by after the board call. She didn't sit. You have full authority, she said. Effective immediately. I know. She watched my face for a second, like she was checking for something relief, satisfaction, maybe even anger. She didn't find it. She nodded once and left. Renee came next. She set a document on my desk. Everything's locked, she said. Non-retaliation, direct reporting, veto authority. If anyone pushes back, you call me. I will. She paused at the door. Most people would have walked away. I thought about it, I said. Then I realized I wouldn't sleep. She smiled faintly and left. By mid-afternoon, my access was back not as a favor, but as a correction. Files reopened. Red flags resurfaced. People slowed down when they spoke to me now. Careful, precise. Lila stood at my doorway. I'm glad you stayed. I stayed to fix what they broke, I said. Not to prove anything. She nodded and went back to her desk. I packed 1 box anyway. Not because I was leaving, but because I didn't want to pretend this place owned me. When I walked out that evening, it was through the front doors. Badge clipped on, steps steady. No one stopped me. They told me I was being fired for my own good. What they really meant was be quiet. I didn't. And that's why they lost control of the story. If you've ever been pushed out for doing the right thing, you already know the choice isn't between comfort and conflict. It's between silence and living with yourself. Tell us what you would have done. And if stories like this matter to you, subscribe to Revengeaita